Recognized Uncle Walker D01. Recognized Emily of Arden D12.
Hello, team. Welcome to Comic Commentary, tie-in issues 7 and 8. In this series, we'll be reviewing the Young Justice tie-in comics that folded directly into the story arcs of the animated series. My name's Rich, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Emily.
Hi, everybody. In Comic Commentary, we will be discussing how the tie-in comics relate to the video game, the first two seasons of Young Justice, and the broader DC universe. Unlike our regular review episodes, we won't be having a Crashing the Mode segment, so consider this your spoiler warning.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter at the YJ Files, on Facebook at Crashing the Mode, on our website, crashingthemode.com, on the yjfiles.tumblr.com, and at our email address, whelmedpodcast@gmail.com. And with all that out of the way, let's hand it back to Emily for it.
Hello, Megan.
This time around, we are dealing with issues 7 and 8, titled Rabbit Holes and Wonderland. The issue release dates were August 24th and September 21st of 2011. The timestamps in universe were July 31st through August 3rd, and then we skip ahead to August 7th and 8th. And the episode tie-in for this one is that Wonderland takes place during school and ends with Artemis's first scene in Infiltrator.
The writers for this were Greg Weisman and Kevin Hops. The penciler was Christopher Jones, whoop, and Dan Davis in issue 8. Inker Dan Davis, colors Zach Atkinson. The letterer was Carlos M. Mangual. I'm never going to get that guy's name right. I'm so sorry. And Desi Santi in issue 8.
Just in time for your next mission.
So our establishing shot for this issue is that Artemis is waiting at a bus stop in Gotham City to pick up her mom, who has just been released from prison after spending 6 years there. They then head home for the night and have dinner while Artemis's father remains conspicuously absent from the picture. While Artemis is fletching arrows in her room later that night, her father returns home and she overhears a fight between her parents in the other room.
Her parents here vaguely discuss why her mom Paula ended up in prison, how her dad Lawrence never visited her, how Jade became a criminal while Paula was away, before Paula issues an ultimatum. Basically, Artemis's dad has to give up his life of crime or she's kicking him out. With that, Lawrence leaves, warning Paula that it won't matter what she does, crime is in Artemis's blood, and nothing can stop her from becoming what he trained her to be.
Artemis overhears all of this and makes a decision. She's done waiting for something to happen. So she suits up in her green costume, grabs her bow and quiver, and heads out into Gotham City. There, she stops the armed robbery of a convenience store, subduing the two thieves and leaving the money behind before running off into the night before the police arrive. We then get a little 2-page montage of her stopping other criminals over the next couple of nights, because she's decided this is what she's doing from now on.
On her 4th night out on patrol, Artemis sees something streak across the sky. She follows after this white rabbit and sees that he's crashed into Gotham Academy Gym and is now fighting alongside Robin and Kid Flash against Amazo. She also sees Professor Ivo, which, interestingly enough, is someone she recognizes as an associate of her dad's. But before she can jump into the fight, she's attacked by a horde of Ivo's magnificent monkeys.
The next issue then begins with Artemis fighting off the robot monkeys in a tree outside while the boys take on Amazo down in the gym. In the middle of the fight, Artemis has a brief moment to fire an arrow that saves Kid Flash's life before she has to go back to dealing with her own problem. The team then wins the fight, and Artemis watches from a distance, desperately wanting to join the group, but she slips away and heads back home before anyone can see her. No matter how much she wants to be part of the team, she's sure that no one would accept her as a hero given her family history.
That white rabbit was Superboy, by the way, in case...
Did I not say that?
I don't think I put that in there when I was reading it. The streak flying across the sky was Superboy after he'd gotten hammered by Amazo. So a few nights later, Artemis comes home from... It wasn't an actual white rabbit. That would have been great. A few nights later, Artemis comes home from patrol to find her mother sitting in the living room with... Batman and Green Arrow. They invite her to join the team because they discovered what had happened on that night. And Paula gives her permission. Artemis's only condition is that neither hero tell the rest of the team who her family really is. They agree and decide to introduce Artemis as Green Arrow's niece. We then cut to the next day, the afternoon of the actual animated series episode Infiltrator, where Artemis is introduced to the rest of the team before Wallman makes his glorious entrance onto the scene, and a relationship dynamic is established.
Yep. And it's history from there, and a Super Sweethearts episode.
All right, let's feel some Aster.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
I have one. I have something from the very beginning.
Go for it.
I am absolutely fascinated that both Artemis and Wally have posters of Richard Dragon in their rooms. I don't know what Richard Dragon is doing in this, like why he's a teenage, like, I don't know. Is he like an MMA fighter in Young Justice? I don't know, but Artemis has one poster in her room, and it's one of the posters of a person that Wally also has in his room. That's fascinating to me.
Bonding. It's just another thing they bonded over.
You can't think of, you have to go there, right? You have to, like, you know, they both like Richard Dragon, who never gets mentioned in the show. It's so funny to me. I don't know.
Season 3?
Maybe.
Season 3.
We'll see. We'll see.
No, okay, because now I'm just having the idea that they both took that same poster to college, and their apartment has 2 of them.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, his poster is technically a little different, and I think his is like a signed poster because he actually has the contacts. But there's definitely like it's like a martial arts dude with a dragon and a yin yang symbol, which could be anyone, except it's interesting that he has a Richard Dragon. I don't know. Yeah. It's got to be him. Anyway,
Gotta love little things like that. As for me, I really love these 2 issues. Like, I think these 2 issues are one of our really strong arc in the whole run of the tie-in comics.
I'm with you.
And I love the little things that we get to see about Artemis's family in this. Like, and it's just little throwaway lines and things that, like, I had read the first part of this. I hadn't read the second part of this until we were doing this episode. It was the first time I actually sat down and read Wonderland. But I love finding out that, like, I did not realize Paula was in prison for 6 years at the start of the series, because the show never says how long she was there or when she came back. And I don't know why, but my mind was always like, oh, her and Artemis have been living together for a time. No.
And they also, in this show, they don't talk about, like, what happened. Did she get in the wheelchair while she was in prison, before she was in prison? But this comic makes it pretty clear. She literally fell and then took the fall. So whatever happened, that's messed up.
Yeah. It's so
messed
good.
up.
And the implication that Artemis was living with her father until just a few weeks before she was introduced on the show was like, I never realized that it was that close. Like, again, my mind went with the best case scenario.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But even thinking back on it, even Bereft kind of makes that clear, though, because 6 months ago, she was still used to her father being around. So maybe I should have put that together earlier, but I didn't. But I really like seeing that.
Yeah.
And the implication that even while Paula was in prison, her and Artemis still did have a very loving relationship as much as they could, because they point out that Artemis wrote to her every single week.
Yeah.
And that pains my heart in the best possible way. It's just a very sweet thing to get to see Artemis having that softer side that we didn't always see on the show, especially at first. Because at first, Artemis was very guarded, and then we get to see little moments like this.
Yeah.
And along those same lines, I also, after reading this, went and did some checking of dates of when things came out, because I like figuring out not only where this ties into the show, but where this ties into what episodes of the show had already premiered. Because we said, like, this took place during Schooled and Infiltrator, but by the time these 2 comics came out, Rabbit Holes came out after Infiltrator and Downtime. Both of those were out in the world by the time Rabbit Holes came out, and they started filling in Artemis's backstory. And then there was the whole hiatus where the comics were coming out during it. And then Wonderland came out after Targets. So we already had like some dots to connect when it came to who Artemis's family was when these were out. And I just think that's really interesting to like see when they were deciding to drop these hints and when they were letting the hints drop in comics and letting those things connect. And I really liked seeing that.
Oh, I found it interesting too that they very purposefully kept her dad's face covered in every scene, which I think is interesting because it isn't for a while before, like, it was the episode where Captain Marvel's jumping back and forth between worlds, right? That's the first time I remember us seeing him without his mask on, because he riles up the crowd outside of Star Labs and backs away with this look on his face. And I was like, who's that guy? Because we know he's blonde, but we hadn't seen him without the hockey mask.
Yeah.
But they even way ahead of the game, they were just like, nobody's going to know who this guy is. It doesn't really matter, right? But they kept his face covered because they didn't want you to know exactly who he was. It was interesting.
Yeah. And
Lawrence is such a unique name.
Yeah.
And if you knew, I didn't remember Sportsmaster. I wouldn't have remembered Sportsmaster's secret identity back when it was first airing.
No.
I might have purposefully not found that one out. But so I would have had no idea, at the time. But I didn't read the comics till after the whole show had come out. So, it's interesting.
We're getting closer to the point where I started reading them monthly. And when that comes around, I will talk about that when we hit that issue. But we're not there yet. These I all read in back issues that I dug up in my comic book store after I started reading them.
Yeah.
I also really like reading this one. The art in this one is super interesting. I just feel like this issue I felt is like the moment where the comics started getting really good. Like the comics were good, but this one I think did a lot of things that were really different and interesting with it. And one of them was that when I was rereading it, the moment where Artemis is like, I'm done waiting, and she puts on the whole costume and she grabs her bow, the next page, it's set up in such a way that it looks like she might be robbing the store until they switch the camera around and you see both of the thieves there that she's trying to stop. And I'm like, I love this. I love that you're visually doing this thing of like, you've just established that like her family's criminals. She's sick and tired of waiting around. She's going to go do something. What is she going to do? Is she going to go be a villain? No, she's going to go be a hero. I'm like, that is just wonderful the way that they set that up, because there were so many ways that they could have framed that scene, but they framed it like that. And I'm like, that's great.
I agree with you. And I think it's interesting that so in this arc, so she wants to do the hero gig, but she goes for several days, she says, or something, and she can't find any crimes to stop when she sees Superboy go flying through the air and into Gotham Academy. And then she really wants to be on the team. This really interesting dichotomy of just like, oh, I want to be on this team in a bad way. And then, of course, she gets on the team and she's like, whatever. Whatever, you guys. I don't have to be here. I don't have to do any of this. You guys couldn't do without me. Yeah, very teenager-y. I remember myself doing similar things.
Artemis is a very complicated girl. Doesn't like to talk about her feelings.
Right.
But with that, it was also this, for anyone who doesn't know, this 2-issue arc is why the Superboy Artemis ship is called White Rabbit, because she refers to him as White Rabbit the entire time until she finds out that his name is Superboy. And I think it's just really fun and clever. And rereading these and knowing how the series pans out and who ends up with who, it's really funny to read her just being like, wow, this dude's super hot. I'm like, you're not going to end up with him. You're going to end up with the skinny redhead that you saved the life of. You're not ending up with Superboy.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, girl.
Right. What I find is funny is that Superboy is so often referred to as Superboy's so hot. And I'm like, it is not a phrase I ever hear about Superman. Right? People are not like, man, Clark Kent is hot. It's just not a thing. And so I'm like, okay, so he definitely looks like Clark. He does have Lex's human DNA. Maybe he looks a little bit different. Maybe it's his attitude. Maybe it could be all kinds of things. But it's just so funny to me. It's like, no, he looks, and he literally has the same voice actor and everything. It's like, interesting.
gonna break it down as I believe that it's because Superman is not constantly shirtless for no other reason than he can be, and Superman is not nearly as brooding as Connor.
I see. I see. So Superboy is like Bruce and Clark, a brooding Superman. That's what people want. Yeah, that's what the fans want.
Because this one is an Infiltrator, I can reference back to Infiltrator. One of the things I find hilarious about that episode when they throw Superboy into the bank of lockers and one of them opens and there's a picture of Superman. With a bunch of little hearts around it and he just punches it. So clearly, at least one person in Gotham Academy thinks that Superman is a very cute man. Apparently. He just loves him for the goodness of his heart. You never know. So funny. Trying to get back to the more Let's get back serious on track. Aspects of this comic, which is not easy when every other line out of Artemis's mouth for a good several pages is just, wow, he's really hot. I should probably focus on defeating these monkeys, but like, look at that hot boy over there. And I'm like, focus, girl, focus. Oh, well, that's one of the things I wanted to point out too. They had the team, right? Like it was Robin and Superboy. They both get their butts kicked by monkeys and outmaneuvered. You had Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Miss Martian all got outmaneuvered by monkeys. And Artemis takes down like 20. Like 20 of them in this scene. I was like, whoa, nice, very nice. So, she's got different training. Yeah. I think it goes down to like has very different training from the rest of them that I think could very much benefit her in that situation. Clearly she has training in fighting mobs, apparently. Like, which could be a thing. I mean, I could see that. I think Robin would too, but like, that raises some horrible implications and makes me even more worried for Artemis in general. Also, her dad literally really knows Ivo. Maybe she's trained against monkeys. I don't know. I have so many questions about her throwaway line of, I know that guy. I recognize that guy. He hangs out around with my dad. I'm like, how many other villains do you know on a personal, they're friends with my parents basis? Does this come up often? Because I want to know. I want more of that. Yeah, I do too. And I think it's a great like twist on her and what she knows. Like, you know, if it was a role-playing game, she would definitely have like underworld streetwise knowledge. Yeah. And, you know, had read the files kind of, you know, things on other villains. And they reference it on the show every now and then, like in Infiltrator, because we keep coming back to that. Yeah. They have her, when somebody explains something, she just goes, yeah, sounds like the Shadows. And I'm like, everyone's like, how do you know that? I'm like, not everyone. Wally. Wally's all like, who are you? Are you? Yeah, like you know anything about the Shadows. And it's wonderful. It's a great line. But I like the implication that she knows more than just the League of Shadows and this guy, and I want more of that. If they go into that in season 3, not season 2, I would be very happy of just runs into supervillains and is like, yeah, they came to our Christmas party every year. Like, I don't know. I know that. Right. I like that. I like that as she's looking through the window, she's like, oh, look, it's Robin and Kid Flash and, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. But it's just not that she's not just aware of the sidekicks who are public figures. Yeah. She also knows who's not there. Like, she's studied the sidekicks. And she's like, Speedy's not there. As if like that would be an assumption of, you know, sidekicks together. I mean, maybe she saw the news broadcast thing about how they were being like brought into the Hall of Justice and, you know, or whatever. But still, I found it interesting that it was like she's breaking it down. Like, who's there? Who's missing? You know, what space can I fill? Because I want to be on this team in a bad way, which is so funny. She knows how to figure out where she's most useful. The show also did reference at least once that Artemis has seen at least some of them on the news. Because when she meets Kid Flash and Bereft, she goes, I've seen Kid Flash on the news. Black. He doesn't wear black. Right. I'm like... Maybe she was just watching Wally. Oh, don't worry, Rich. Lots of people have made that claim and have written things based around that.
Probably.
And it's wonderful. I've seen more than one thing that's like tiny little 12-year-old Artemis had a crush on tiny little 12-year-old Kid Flash, and that's part of why when she meets him, she gets very flustered and immediately goes into attack mode.
Nice.
And it's a very fun fan theory.
I love it.
And speaking of Artemis and Kid Flash, I love that the comic makes it very clear. Like the show references, but the comic shows how Artemis saves Kid Flash's life, and it is, in my opinion, a very deliberate choice on the choice of the writers to have it be Kid Flash who is the one in danger, and Artemis the one who saves him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Gotta love that shipping foreshadowing. It's wonderful. It's what I talk about.
I know.
Here.
It's so interesting to me because I don't see that. I'm just like, oh, that's nice. This is like probably how I was anyway. Just like, I have no clue what's happening. I don't know what's going on. Somebody's flirting? I don't understand. What is that? I don't know.
Not even on a level of like, she's flirting with him by saving his life. Because then it's like, wait, what? But
right.
Just on a... Writers know what they're doing when they make a connection like that between two characters.
Was it in Infiltrators where like they get knocked together and he lands on top of her?
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, that's awkward. And then just went on to the next scene, and you're like breaking it down beat by beat in the show, like talking about how like, oh yeah, we know what that means. I was like, they would have what? I just yes. Thought, wow, that's unfortunate for them. They hate each other, and then moved on.
Nope.
Yeah,
those are the scenes you only include when you're bothering to put characters together.
Yeah, that's the part. That's the part where I'm wrong. You're wrong, Rich. Just wrong.
You're not wrong. You just didn't know what to look for.
Well, that's fair. That's
why I'm here.
Oh, sorry, I'm not wrong. I'm ignorant of the subtleties of what's going on. That's why I needed you on the show. Point these things out.
But getting back to
Caleb
Artemis.
And I and the smoochies, just the smoochies weren't like a thing for us. Caleb's listening, probably nodding, going, yeah, the smoochies is not a thing. Yeah. Anyway.
But getting back to Artemis, who is the focus of this series of issues outside of any given ship, whether it is White Rabbit or Spitfire, I love that we get a glimpse into her personal insecurities in this. Because her parentage is kept secret on the show for so long, we don't get to see how much that affects her until Insecurity, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, until the episode that is literally about Artemis dealing with that. Right. So it's nice seeing it early on that this is something that she's been worried about from the minute she joined the team. Yeah. From the minute she joined the team, she was worried about, they're going to find out, they're going to hate me for it. No one is ever going to accept me as a hero, as part of this team, as anything. Yeah. Because of something that is completely outside of my control.
And we haven't even talked about Cheshire. Like these two issues are called White Rabbit and Wonderland, and clearly her sister has a Cheshire Cat poster over her bed. Like this was no way subtle. I mean, it was zero subtle.
Still didn't
and I
get
did
it.
not catch it at all because the Artemis character is really, I mean, existed in the comics for decades, like a very long time. But this was definitely a mishmash and of who this character was, and she was never related to Cheshire in the comics. And you know, I was like, Cheshire is not. I mean, there's no way I could plug Cheshire into this family, but it's because I had expectations that I didn't even know that I had, or like. But it was not subtle. I mean, I go back and I'm just like, just like face palming myself. Yeah, of course.
Oh, no, it's wonderful. And me being me and me being the nerdy fairy tale loving girl that I am, I do love all of the references to Alice in Wonderland throughout this. But it's also kind of hilarious going back and reading it after my main Masks character is called White Rabbit. Yeah. And so I caught that too. It keeps being in my head every time I read these issues now. I'm like, I didn't intend for this, but whoops, here we are.
Didn't you though? Didn't you?
I shall neither confirm nor deny.
Awesome. Do you have anything else? I think I wrapped up all my things except for I just love how her motivation, like the match gets lit with her after her dad's like, she has no choice. She's gonna be what I made her to be, and she's like, I'm done with you.
I'm done.
You're out. I'm out. We're all out. I'm out. and then she just goes and does her thing.
It's so good. It's great seeing that choice that she makes, and it's great seeing her as someone who is making a choice to do this and to do the right thing, even though Artemis is often portrayed as like she's the rough and tumble kind of breaks the rules character, but she is also the one who goes out of her way to be like, no, I'm going to go and do the right thing because I have the ability to, so I might as well do something good. And the way that it's framed throughout the first issue with all of her internal dialogue is her being like, I'm just waiting. I am spending my entire life waiting for something to happen, and I'm done.
It's incredibly important for your protagonists to like make those decisions. Let your protagonists make those decisions. You know,
so good.
Especially when you're like sidekicks in a world full of very famous, powerful adults. Super easy for writers to just, well, Batman's going to tell them what to do. You know, don't do that, please. Please give.
Just don't.
Please give your main characters in your show agency. All of them, whether it's your movie, TV show, comic. Please, please, please.
My last couple of notes here are kind of around that the scene in which Green Arrow and Batman show up at her apartment. One, whoever decided that it was a good idea to have Batman and Green Arrow in full costume sitting in a normal living room, bless you, because that is an incredible image and it's hilarious and I love it. But with that whole little sequence, that also is right before Artemis walks in, is the only time in the series, comics, or show that I can remember them actually showing Artemis take her mask off. She's either always wearing it or not wearing it. And seeing her take it off just always has so many questions in my mind because I've seen cosplayers try to make this. And it's a mask that looks great on the show and looks great in the comics. And the second you try to make it in real life, it just doesn't function. And so it's just kind of, it's like it functions, but you got to go through some crazy stuff to make that work and look right, because the way it's drawn on the show is that it's like a cowl, but it doesn't have a top. So it's like, how do you get that to stay up? How do you make that work?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And it's just having them kind of acknowledge that for a moment in the comics, which is, now she's taking it off. I'm like, but how? How did any of that just work? They just have her like, and it's off now. I'm like, how? I have questions. It's just one of those things where I just go, okay, gonna brush that off and ignore it because it looks fabulous and we can't question it too much.
That's fair. That's fair.
But it's great seeing it's really fun seeing Artemis cosplayers be like, I don't know how I'm gonna make the mask work, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I'll have to go and look at the ones that I've seen because I've seen some pretty incredible Artemis cosplays. So I'm gonna take a look at their face.
Around that same scene, I also really like the mentality behind why Paula agrees to let Artemis do this, and the show touches on it too, of like most parents would be terrified to hear their daughter was doing this, and it's Paula is so terrified of her daughter going in the other direction that she pushes her so far towards the side of good, not just don't become a criminal. She's like, no, go be a superhero. Go to the farthest extreme away from what I'm worried about you becoming to prevent you from becoming that. And I just think that's a really interesting mentality that they touch on.
And she does it like less than a week after getting home.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Last note, because I just got to do this real quick. Last note, I love that with the scene leading right up to Artemis's introduction in Infiltrator, they bother to have McGann throughout. I'm sure you and Wally will get along famously right before Wally stumbles into the scene. McGann shipped it from day one, and all they did was fight for most of the series.
She called it.
She did, and it's wonderful. Now feel free to move us on.
Sorry, you had to get a ship thing in at the end. I didn't see it.
It's the last thing in the comic. I had to acknowledge it.
As obvious as a Cheshire Cat poster, I should have seen that coming. All right, let's get on with some artistic license.
Have all four sidekicks ever been in the same place at the same time?
Don't call us sidekicks.
In artistic license, we'll be recommending individual issues, miniseries, and graphic novel collections, both from DC and other companies who have titles that we think Young Justice fans will enjoy. Artistic license is designed to give you an on-ramp into the classic story arcs of the past so that you might catch a glimpse of what's to come in the future. And this week's artistic license is coming from Emily. She loves this series.
I really love this series. This week's artistic license is Runaways. Since we're dealing with rejecting evil parents in this 2-issue arc, it only seemed fitting to suggest
fair.
this
Yeah.
this Marvel series that is very near and dear to my heart. If you listened to my first discussion episode, you might have heard me talk about how this was one of my first introductions to comics, was this series that throws you a little bit into the deep end, but you catch on pretty quick. It deals with a group of teenagers living in LA who discover that their parents are actually supervillains and they run away from home. It's about as simple as that, but it deals with a lot of really, really interesting plot lines and really amazing characters. And if you love Young Justice because it is about teenage superheroes figuring themselves out and figuring out where they belong in this world and what they are doing with their lives, this series does that same sort of thing, but from Marvel instead of from DC. They don't have mentors. They don't have anyone helping them figure out what they're doing. They are just on the road with superpowers trying to figure out what they're doing with their lives. And it is just a really fun series that I really enjoy. It's all available on Comixology if that is where you want to get your comics. You can also, of course, buy it in graphic novel form from your local comic book shop or wherever you may find them. But I definitely suggest starting with issue 1 of volume 1 and going from there if you enjoy it, because unlike some series, this isn't one that you can necessarily jump right into the middle of because it's a bit of a crazy concept with a crazy setup. But the first graphic novel collection put together was called Pride and Joy. And if you start with that and go from there, you can generally find all of it. If you are on the internet nowadays, you might have heard about how there's a revival going on right now. You can jump in right there, but it's much better if you have some of the background for the characters before jumping into the revival, even though it's written as its own separate entity. There's also a TV show right now, but that's a bit different from the comics. I definitely suggest starting with the comics and starting with issue 1 if you want to get into Runaways and all of the crazy teenage shenanigans that they get up to.
I haven't read the comic yet. I've known of the comic for a very long time, but I hadn't got a chance to read it. I did start watching the show, and the first few episodes were actually really quite good, but I'm not up to speed, and I have heard as of this recording that there's some episodes that come up that kind of go a little left and do some strange things from the comic. So I don't know. Take the TV show with a grain of salt. Maybe it'll be its own thing. That's great.
Maybe.
We'll see how it goes.
I'll just be still waiting for somebody to be like, "Oh, hey, look, we're all the way through the first season and they haven't run away yet.
Yeah,
they haven't done the title yet."
What did Neal say? They're called the Stickarounds.
They're called the Stickarounds. Yeah. Considering them running away, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, happens at the end of issue 1.
Nice.
It's like we're going with the title.
Nice. All right,
But,
and
yes.
with all that, we can, I think we wrap up this mission and head out of the Watchtower. The best way to support our show is, of course, share it with a friend. You can also support us with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. Leaving a rating or review pushes us up in the search ranks and helps others find the show.
Please continue to hashtag buy YJ Comics on Comixology and buy the show somewhere online until the DC streaming service launches, which will hopefully be soon.
Soon.
You can also now use hashtag Young Justice Outsiders when talking about season 3, wherever you're talking about it online. And if you want to help us get more episodes, more Secret Origins, more actual play podcasts, and more of all of the other stuff you love, please consider supporting us through Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can help us do even more with the show while getting some great rewards for yourself. And remember,
Stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our hosts are Rich Howard and Emily Booza. Our editor and producer is Neal Powell. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.